Hi, I'm Jeff Murrah. I want to welcome you to True Texas History, where today, April the 2nd, we are going to be dealing with the significance of Fort St. Louis. Now, I chose this day because back in 1689, this is when the Alonso de Leon expedition finally reached Fort St. Louis. Now, one of my friends pointed out long ago that, in terms of history, it's not just a matter of conveying the facts, but what's the significance of it? What's the importance behind it? So I'm going to address that today. Usually I just convey the facts and sometimes the significance. But Fort St. Louis was an interesting phenomenon. This is the settlement that LaSalle went ahead and set up there in Texas and essentially kind of used as his headquarters. Now, there are several interesting things that happen here. Let's go ahead and talk about it physically. Physically, archaeologists debated for a long time where Fort St. Louis was until the work was done to go ahead and actually dig it up, and they found some pottery fragments that were definitely French and not Spanish. Now, this isn't surprising because one of the missions of the Spanish was to destroy all evidence of French activity there in Texas. See, back then, many of the European nations, in terms of their colonies, they wanted to take complete control and didn't want anybody to have any counterclaims. And so that meant that they needed to remove all evidence because there was some legitimacy to the French claim. And so they wanted to remove it. For instance, Alonso de Leon, when he did discover the fort, that was his fourth expedition into Texas to reach it. If Spain is spending the money for 4 different expeditions to find a fort, that ought to tell you something. That says there's some importance to it. Something happened there that was important enough to send men out into the wilderness. The first couple of expeditions, the first time he went up to the Rio Grande, measured the river, and came all back. And the next time he went up a little bit further, and then a little bit further. And then finally, between the 3rd and 4th expedition, some Frenchmen had left the colony and joined up with the Indians and essentially took over the whole tribe as chief, which was not unusual in those days. And the Spanish caught him, and from him they found out more about the location of where Fort St. Louis was. Now, when they reached the fort, there were a couple of survivors there, and some of the men had died and needed to be buried. There had been a big Indian attack from the Karankawas. At least the Karankawas were the ones attributed to it. Now, Spanish went in. Of course, they removed all evidence. Some of the things that the French did, they had brought in books and shared them with the Indians, and the Spanish saw to it that those books were located and destroyed. This is, an ancient, 1600 version of cultural cleansing. That's a term that I had heard when all the fighting was going on in the former Yugoslav Republic. Cultural cleansing. And I never dreamed that kind of stuff happened in Texas. But yes, it did, where one nation tried to remove all remnants of the previous nation, any statues, memorials, structures, books, etc., because they saw those things as a threat. Not unlike today, I guess. But Fort St. Louis was finally reached, and eventually the Spanish turned around, not only removed all evidence of French settlement there, they ended up building a big fort, not just a small fort, one of those multi-sided. I don't remember whether it was 6 or 8 sided. It looks like a big star deal type of fort at that location. Now, Fort St. Louis and its presence also ended up spurring the Spanish to begin to establish a series of missions throughout Texas to maintain control. Back in those days, the Spanish used missions and occasionally forts to hold on to their territory, almost like the Chinese policy of Belt and Road these days. But the Spanish went ahead and pioneered the strategy of using missions. And the fifth Alonso expedition went ahead and established the mission to the Tejas Indians that is located there in East Texas. And that led to many more missions being established in Texas and civilization coming about. But many times we forget what happened with Fort St. Louis and the men and women who bravely went with La Salle to this new land, got knocked off course, and found themselves down there on the Texas coast fighting mosquitoes and Indians. But it's an intriguing chapter of Texas history that we're still learning about. I know archaeologists, they're continuing to dig there and making new discoveries because many cultures did contribute to Texas. The French, the Spanish, Czech, German. I even have a book in my collection on Belgians in Texas. I may have to share that with y'all sometime. But anyways, if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to leave them below. But until next time, I wish you vaya con Dios and a happy Easter. Goodbye.